This is Story Recapped. Today I'm going to explain a comedy, drama, sci-fi film called Cocoon. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In Tampa, Florida, a young boy named David observes the moon from his telescope. His mother suddenly calls out to him to check if he's asleep, so he leaves the telescope and jumps to bed. In the ocean, dolphins start squeaking as a dark cloud hovers above the water. Suddenly, a beam of light illuminates the area and shines through an undisclosed sunken civilization at the bottom of the ocean. One afternoon, Ben, Mary, Joe, Alma, Bernie, and Rose arrive at the St. Petersburg retirement community after grocery shopping. When Ben gives Rose introduces herself as if she met him for the first time, so Mary reminds her that they know each other. Rose's husband, Bernie, remarks that they'll be fine as long as they remember each other. Later, Ben and Art stop by Pops's room to bring him a box of cupcakes from the grocery store. Afterward, Ben and Art head out of the retirement home with Joe to sneak into the house next door. On their way, Ben asks Joe what the doctor said about his health. Joe claims that everything is fine, but his face suggests that the prognosis is not good. Upon reaching the empty house, the trio take a dip in the swimming pool. At the dock nearby, Jack Bonner arrives on his boat after taking a tourist on a fishing trip. The tourist insists on paying him only half of what he owes because he didn't catch any fish. Kirk, the man in charge of the dock, threatens to untie Jack's boat if he refuses to pay for docking there, so Jack reluctantly gives him all the money he just received. Jack begs him to leave him $5, but Kirk ignores him. As Jack throws a fit, Walter and Kitty approach him to rent his boat for 27 days. Soon, Jack enthusiastically shows them around the boat and assures them that he can take them wherever they need to go. The next day, David goes to the recreational area at the retirement home to visit his grandfather, Ben. Art tells him that they'll go swimming later, so David shows them his swimsuit to let them know he's prepared. However, they soon find out that they can't use the pool that day because the caretaker is taking a group on tour of the property. Walter tells the caretaker that they are renting the property for 26 days. The caretaker notes that they have to pay extra for the pool, man, but Walter stresses that they can clean the pool themselves. Walter and the rest of the group soon head to the middle of the ocean and dive underwater to retrieve some rocks at the site of the sunken city. By the time they bring the rocks to the boat, it's already wrapped in fabric. When they arrive at the dock, Ben, Art, and Joe observe them from a distance as they unload the large rocks. The trio suspects that they're unloading drugs, so Ben tells them that he won't feel bad about sneaking into their pool if they're committing a crime. Joe reminds him that the group can be dangerous, but Ben and Art decide to take their chances. When the trio breaks into the house again, they find the rocks submerged in the water. Joe is scared to swim because of the rocks, but he joins in when Art and Ben jump into the water without hesitation. After a few minutes in the water, the men start feeling unusually energetic. They spend the rest of the hour diving and playing in the water like young men. When they head home, each of them notices that their hormones seem to be raging. That night, Joe invites his wife, Alma, to lie in bed with him. Art visits Bess at home and gives her flowers while Ben sneaks into the shower with Mary. One night, Jack asks Kitty what they're retrieving from the bottom of the ocean, so she tells him that they're rare giant snail shells. Jack accidentally hits his foot with an oxygen tank, so he heads to the cooler to get some ice. When Kitty massages the injured foot, he instantly feels better. Jack asks her out on a date, but Kitty says it wouldn't be a good idea because she's different from other women. Jack assures her that he's interested in getting to know her instead of just fooling around with her. When Joe visits his doctor, he learns that his cancer is in complete remission despite the lack of medical treatment. That night, Joe, Art, Bernie, and Ben go ballroom dancing with the women to enjoy their revitalized health. Rose and Bernie just watch the others with envy because Bernie doesn't have the same stamina as his friends. While Jack is fixing his boat in the engine room, he sees a light coming from a hole, so he takes a peek and sees Kitty undressing. Jack is horrified to discover that Kitty is an alien as she peels off her skin and emits a bright light from her body. When Kitty sees him peeking through the hole, she puts her human skin back on and heads to the engine room, but Jack soon comes out with a blowtorch to keep her away. As Jack attempts to start the boat, Walter approaches him and reveals that he's also an alien. Jack jumps off the boat, but he soon returns when he realizes that the shore is too far. Jack fears that the aliens will take over his body, but Walter hints that they have no such intentions. Walter explains that they came from the planet Antaria to retrieve the crew members of the outpost they set up on Earth thousands of years ago. Walter notes that Jack could alert the authorities, but they would only end up renting someone else's boat. Jack agrees to help them after Walter assures him that they'll leave as soon as they complete their mission. One day, Joe, Ben, and Art take Bernie to the pool so he can be revitalized. However, Bernie refuses to go into the water when he sees the rocks. Suddenly, Bernie sees Walter and his friends arriving at the dock, so he warns his friends that someone is coming. The four men hide in the closet before Walter and his group enter the house. The group soon comes in and puts another large rock into the water. Afterward, Walter takes off his human skin and charges the water with his life force. After the other aliens remove their human skin, they discover the four men hiding in the closet. The men immediately flee from the house and tell the orderlies at their retirement home about the aliens. Although the orderlies are skeptical about what the men saw, they decide to report it to the authorities. When the police stop by the house, Walter asserts that the men must have concocted a story to avoid being arrested for breaking into their house. He promises not to press charges as long as they respect their privacy. Days later, Joe starts feeling weak again, so Ben decides to talk to Walter. Ben explains to Walter that they need the pool to save Joe's life because he has cancer. He promises that no one will know they're swimming there, and they don't care to find out what the aliens are doing. Walter discloses that he made a mistake 10,000 years ago when he picked Atlantis to be their base because he never thought it would sink. He gives Ben permission to swim in the pool as long as they don't touch the cocoons. Ben and his friends soon invite the women to swim in the pool, but Bernie refuses to let Rose come with them because he believes that they're cheating nature. That night, one of the aliens stops by the pool without his human skin to greet Ben and the other guests. With their rejuvenated health, the couples engage in various leisurely activities outside the retirement community over the next few days. One day, Pops confronts Art and Ben because he heard rumors that they are going through a rejuvenation process. The two men deny it, but Pops points out that Ben's wife has been extraordinarily vigorous recently. While Kitty and Jack are swimming near the shore one night, he subtly hints that he wants to make love to her. Kitty notes that it's not physically possible, but she agrees to show him how they do it in Antaria. At the pool, Kitty approaches Jack, but she doesn't allow him to touch her. As Jack stands across from her, a ball of light emerges from Kitty's body and bounces all over the room. The ball stops mid-air for a moment before hitting Jack and filling him with ecstasy. When the couples from the retirement community go bowling one night, Joe decides to part ways with the gang after the game. He tells Alma that he'll just have a few drinks, but he secretly goes to a department store to pick up a woman who works there. Hours later, Joe gets home only to find Alma leaving him a note by the door. As Alma heads to Bess's house, Joe explains that the pool is affecting him. However, Alma reminds him that it's not the first time he has cheated on her. The next morning, Alma refuses to sit with Joe during breakfast. When Art arrives, he invites Joe to the pool to keep his mind away from his relationship problems. Bernie suddenly butts in to scold them about the pool and tells Joe that his marriage is a mess because of their fountain of youth. Joe gets angry about the remark and tries to attack Bernie. Two orderlies attempt to stop him, but Joe knocks both of them down. Pops overhears Bernie mentioning the fountain of youth and figures out that they are referring to the pool in the house next door. Moments later, every resident of the retirement community heads to the house to take a dip in the pool. Walter soon arrives and finds some of them trying to break one of the cocoons, so he furiously tells them to leave the house. Everyone eventually leaves except for Joe, Ben, Art, and Mary. Later, Walter opens one of the cocoons and discovers that the alien inside is dying. Walter tells Ben and his friends that the life force has been completely drained from the water because of the influx of people in the pool. He expresses his anguish that he can no longer bring his friends back to Antaria. As Bernie and Rose prepare to sleep that night, Rose suddenly stops breathing, so Bernie takes her to the pool. While he waits for Rose to wake up, Walter comes in and tells him that the pool no longer works. Bernie offers to give him everything he has, but Walter notes that he can't help him because it's too late. As Rose's body is being taken away, Ben apologizes to Walter for what happened earlier that day. Walter discloses that he never experienced grief before because no one close to him died until that day. He notes that two of his friends are gone and he can't take the other cocoons to their spaceship because they won't survive the flight. Ben asks if he can put them back in the ocean, but Walter explains that they don't have time because they have to leave the next day. Ben offers to help them put the cocoons back underwater that same night to save his friends before they leave. Soon, they carry the cocoons to the boat and bring them back to the site of the sunken city. Walter reveals that the aliens in the cocoons were the crew members who stayed behind when their base was sinking so the others could leave safely. He's confident that they can survive for a long time because they stayed alive underwater for thousands of years. As they head back to the dock, Walter tells the residents of the retirement community that they have room for around 30 people in their spaceship. He notes that they will become students when they arrive in Antaria, but they will eventually become teachers and visit other civilizations. He then assures them that they will live productive lives if they decide to go with them. When Ben asks if they'll live forever, Walter stresses that they don't know what the word means. Later that day, Ben tells David that he and Mary will be going away to a place that they'll never get sick or die. He notes that they won't see each other again because they're headed to outer space. Mary also says goodbye to their daughter, Susan, but she doesn't let her know that it's the last time they'll see each other. Meanwhile, Art takes all of his money out of the bank and gives it all away to people on the streets. Joe visits Alma to convince her to come with the aliens. He stresses that he wants to go, but he'd rather be with Alma even if he only has 6 more months to live, rather than live forever by himself. Art and Ben also tell other residents of the community about Walter's offer to take them to Antaria. A few hours before their departure, Art and Bess get married at the chapel. Soon after the wedding, the residents sneak out of the retirement home while the orderlies are asleep. Later that evening, Susan sees David by the telescope, thinking he's waiting for the lunar eclipse. She notices that he seems sad, so she assumes that he fought with his grandfather. She convinces him to tell her what his grandfather said, but David notes that he promised to keep it a secret. While the residents are boarding Jack's boat, Bernie arrives, but he discloses that he only stopped by to say goodbye. Joe points out that he has no reason to stay because Rose is gone, but Bernie contends that he belongs on Earth because it is his home. Susan goes to the retirement home and asks an orderly to find her parents' friends because Ben and Mary are not in their house. When the orderly checks on the other residents, he finds that all the rooms are empty. Meanwhile, Jack has a hard time starting his boat, so he goes to the engine room to find out what's wrong. The cops soon arrive at the community after getting a report that the residents are missing. As they search the grounds, David sees the boat at the dock, so he runs towards it. Susan and the cops soon notice David running to the boat, so they immediately follow him. After Jack fixes a leak on the engine, he heads back to the cockpit to start the boat. David jumps to the boat and manages to grab onto the rail as it starts to drift away. Ben pulls David inside, but he tells the boy that he can't go with them. It doesn't take long for the Coast Guards to dispatch boats and helicopters to go after the residents. The Coast Guards warns them that they'll board the boat, but Jack assures Walter that they won't be able to catch them. Moments later, the detective on the Coast Guard boat instructs Jack to stop his engines because David is aboard without proper authorization from his mother. As Susan begs the boy to come back to her, David decides to jump into the water. The boy tells Ben to keep going and not worry about him because he's not scared of being in the water. As the Coast Guard rescues David, Jack speeds off to the rendezvous point with the alien ship. The helicopters and the remaining boats follow them, but the spaceship soon arrives and covers the area with fog. Due to the low visibility, the Coast Guard decides to stop pursuing them. As the spaceship slowly descends, Walter hands Jack a bundle of cash to pay for his boat and expresses his gratitude for helping them. Jack then kisses Kitty goodbye after telling her to contact him when she returns. The spaceship soon starts pulling up the boat, so Jack jumps into the water and gets on an inflatable dinghy. As soon as the boat gets inside, the spaceship closes and flies off into space. Days later, the residents' families gather on the beach to mourn the loss of their loved ones. As a priest delivers the eulogy, David stares at the sky and smiles because he knows his grandparents are alive and well. Somewhere in outer space, the ship enters a bright portal that would take the passengers to Antaria.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.